mentors and mentorship. And 2007, South Africa ended up winning the Rugby World Cup. But what made that possible was not the abundance of youth and the exuberance of the youth, but it was the fact that Jake White, when he took the job, he recognized that he needs senior people, senior players to mentor this group of young, brilliant individuals that he had. And so what he did was he took Osdi Run off his farm where he was busy farming potatoes. He looked like a potato. And he made another call to Wales where Percy Montgomery at the time was busy playing part-time rugby and running his hair salon on the side, and made them both come back. And guess what happened? In the final week, or the final few weeks prior to the World Cup, Osdi Run didn't train. In fact, he walked on the side of the field whilst we were running. But he played till the very last minute in the final of the Rugby World Cup. Percy Montgomery came back, and at the age, I think, of like probably 75, he kicked the winning penalty to make us world champions. So the importance of mentorship is not something that you need at a specific moment in your life. I firmly believe, and I want to echo your words, that we need to have mentors along the way throughout our entire lives. So thank you so very much for the messages, and I know that we've all taken that to heart. You know, next, for me, it's a very exciting time to introduce the next speaker, because he represents a company who's very dear to my heart. And the reason for that is that, as a youngster growing up, we didn't have the internet, we didn't know what emails was and all of these things. No Facebook, no Twitter. So what I had to do was I had to make pen pals literally across South Africa and right into Namibia. So every week I'd be sitting writing my letters and so to my pen pals and taking it to the post office, go dropping it off. And from there onwards, I'd be sitting watching the postman coming week in and week. I said, there's my letter now. So when the postman comes and he puts it in the post book, I like sprint back, go pick it up and come back. So for me, it's an absolute pleasure because it holds very fond memories and I hold it very dear to my heart. So Chris Hlekani is the Chief Executive Officer of the Post Office Group. Christopher Hlekani was appointed Group Chief Executive Officer at the South African Post Office on 1st October 2012. Before joining the Post Office, Hlekani acquired experience across the manufacturing, fast-moving consumer goods and airline industries. He was production manager at Nampak, territory manager at Coca-Cola, and industrial manager at L'Oreal South Africa. It's a great pleasure to welcome on stage Mr. Hlekani.
You'll probably find my presentation full of questions than answers. And the reason for that is, I hope through my monologues first, hopefully the dialogue, I'll be able to give a perspective which you can reflect on. Part of it being my experience, part of it being what we are challenged as leadership, and part of it being having gone through the journey of getting to where I am. But before I start, I think, firstly, just to introduce some thoughts, I took a quote from Henry Ford, which goes as, coming together is the beginning, staying together is progress, and working together is success. I'm trying to build a journey of time, because often when we look at issues of leadership, issues of talent, growth, we seem to take an age which is probably in the 19s or even the 20s. But if one look deeper, it comes a long, long way. The key question is, have we ever really taken time to understand ourselves as a system? And often when mentions are made, comments are made about, is it about the manager or is it about the candidate, I will then say it's about the system. Because for this to work, it's a full system which needs to really take cognizance of all the dynamics for it to be practically possible. Henry Ford, in his time, probably a lot was said about what he was trying to achieve. Automation, putting together an assembly line. And it was almost like, what is it which he was trying to achieve? But progressively, we have found ourselves in the same spin of things. The key question is, how do we get out of that spin and do something different to make sure that the system functions effectively? I thought this would give it some perspective. Often we want quick fixes. You know, the cartoon on the left-hand side reads as, I want a coherent new corporate culture that will take us into the third millennium, and I want it by the end of this afternoon. And that's why probably we don't find the level of success we want to achieve, because we believe that somehow it's a quick fix. And my view is that we should never look at it as a quick fix. Actually, we should look at it as a fundamental DNA of an organization. I wish to digress a little bit and share my humble learning out of the Khoisan and survival in the Kalahari. And I took this because I studied zoology, of all the things. I studied zoology and chemistry. A very funny combination, but a very appropriate combination. Because there's science in zoology, but there's leadership in zoology. And during that time, a colleague took time to spend with the Khoisans. What he meant to achieve was not a zoological solution, but it was a management solution. What happened is that I'll take a few examples of what he brought back. Was that when they go hunting, they make sure that they mark their tools, they prepare their tools well, so as when there is a kill, they all gather together and determine which of the arrows killed and who did it belong to. Now that's a boardroom discussion about success. Further to that, they then, after identifying who killed, they allow that person to skin off, take the stomach and blood and liver, pull it together, and when they go back, he's the one who walks in front. Recognition. It's about identifying who actually was the glory person for the day. Secondly, what was also interesting is when you get old and you're not fit to hunt, you stay at home as a man. But you have a responsibility to take the young ones, teach them how to build an arrow, take locusts as a target and teach them to shoot. Now, we may take it that very simple. It's a very complex thing if you think about it this way, that as the locust responds to something happening externally, it jumps. You need to measure the speed of the arrow, so at the point in time, it hits the target at the right place, which is the locust. Take it further, if you go out in the bush, the animals are more aggressive. You have to get to the same extent. What is about that? Transfer of skill. It's not by osmosis, it's a deliberate intent to make sure that there's learning which continues. But it goes a little bit gross. At those days when things were tough, when you reach a point where you are no longer productive, in other words, you cannot teach, you only consume food, you were taken away to die peacefully. It's about timing and when a resource is no longer useful. Now, it's about the system, and I'm trying to demonstrate that across time, a systematic way of looking at development is very, very key. And then lastly, resource utilization. You take a baobab tree, they will assess the use of the full tree to its full potential. And I'm just going to take the fruit as an example. The fruit, they will take it, cut it in half, the two skins become a bowl when done. They will then take the powdery substance, because it is known to be nutritionally high, and scrape it off and keep it for when somebody is weak, when you need, you're sick and you need high nutrients. And then they will take the seed, fry it, extract oil. Now, that's full utilization of resource. What do you call that? Value chain understanding. Now, all these things are the things which faces us every day as an organization for sustainability. The key question is, do we surround ourselves with understanding of what do we transfer a skill, what talent is appropriate to deliver that, and how best to ensure that it is sustainable over time. Now, I took some stats around how CEOs and priorities is about. 66% of CEOs, well, this was a survey was done by PwC on the 14th annual CEO survey. And during that survey, a few things which I think are interesting for us as a room is that 66% of the CEOs appreciate that there is a lack of skill and the need for talent. Secondly, 83% of the CEOs believe that somehow, somewhere there will be a change. They need to change their strategies to align the next steps around people and how people management goes. 65%, there's a strong feeling that non-financial measures, reward measures are quite critical in managing for change. Which is probably, if we reflect to the story I've given you, it's more prominent. It's not only about financial recognition, but it's also around reward and recognize for the effort which you take, if you take the story I gave you. Some key questions which I believe a lot of us are asking ourselves is around, why should we care about retention? Whose job is it? What should I do as a manager? What should I do as the person who probably is perceived as the talent? And is there any difference from a gender dynamic point of view? I always believe that we should ask ourselves more and more when we get to rooms like this as to, is there a gender balance? Because skill has nothing to do with gender. It's to do with some of the things I've shared earlier on. And it's to do with something about self, which is, what can I do about it personally? Because these are some of the questions we need to be asking ourselves in order to be successful. I tried to think of what I call a Pathfinder for growth. And I took it because I think it reflects a lot about what I went through. I can reflect with Ashwin. From a point of view that at times humble beginnings take us a long way. I come from a rural environment. When we grew up, guidance was around 3 skill sets. If you were deemed clever, you become a doctor. If you're kind like in between, you will do nursing. Become a teacher. It started to go down to becoming more police and then be a clerk. That was it. That was guidance. That's all you had to choose within. If you thought of anything else, it didn't exist. Now, to come out of that environment and do something totally different, it meant that I had to think hard about what I believe is relevant for me, which is one component of the system, self-assessment. Now, I think it's important for one to determine the goals clearly. And there's always trade-offs in career and within, because we cannot all be in the same place, same pace. So you need to be saying to yourself, where do I want to go? What are the trade-offs to achieve what I want to achieve? Surely you need to make sure that there's a good fit. Because sometimes ambition exceeds what you are capable of achieving, given all things equal. The right culture, which is to do with the organization, is also very appropriate. It is also important to look for opportunities to grow, but can you define growth? Because if you haven't defined that, you won't be able to see what is that which you talk about it, and share and talk about it as much as possible. Because if no one understands where you are, it's got to be impractical for being recognized of what is worth. So talk to your colleagues. You'll probably learn a lot out of sharing with others and being guided by what comes out of these conversations. Of course, find somebody who will hold you where it's appropriate to harness your potential. It would be inappropriate for me not to take a break and talk about our business, my business, the business South Africa believes in, which is our post office. Many of us don't think much about post office other than when it talk about post and letters and email and no longer writing letters and so forth. But we're a very interesting business. But I'm going to share this just to give you a dimension of what challenges are there for organizations in general and how you respond to that, linking back to talent. Our main business is, of course, post office, issues, letters, but we have a bank, which was traditionally not a bank, as in comparable to the four main banks. We have submitted a license to become a fully fledged bank, and you'll see where I'm coming from a talent point of view. We have DocX. DocX, so many wouldn't know, but lawyers, when they move data or documents, they no longer say they don't usually say we querying documents, they say we DocXing, because of the fact that it's a very lawyer or legal fraternity product. We've got courier products, XPS, PX, and speed services. Now, during the breakfast or early drinks, someone asked me, what do you really do and how have you adapted to the changes of. And I said, it is said that we're not known for what we do. And I just want to pick a few examples of what we do and not known for. We understood and understand that there's a change in terms of how our customers view us. Number one, we understand technology is here and it's here to stay. So what do? We no longer move mail like we used to move mail. We move data. And at a point of need, we print. And we appreciate that we no longer need to print with time. We need to go to mobile. That's what we do. We understand that the transmission of data, which was a growth from letter to data, needs security. By the way, when you go on Microsoft and do transaction, the certificate and authentication of the data you move, it's part of us. What do we do? Microsoft will drive the authentication part of it. So we're quite there in terms of what we do. We're very much involved as part of the new ID, authentication, certification. That's the extent of which we're moving with technology. Of course, the ability for us to share how we're growing with this change is very important. However, what I wanted to share around talent and relevance of this discussion is the following. One is that to become a bank and a fully fledged bank, it means a total overhaul of skill sets. We have to now say, what is that which we will do to take that which is a very stable, long service employee into the new age in terms of service, in terms of skill. And these are some of the things which faces organization. The ability to have a system, and hence I keep on going back to system, is very critical. Because we can't respond to that without looking at it systematically. The fact that mail is declining and we're moving into other markets, much as many of you now are doing internet shopping and so forth, who moves those parcels? Post office. So the relevance of post office remains, but the appropriateness in terms of how we apply ourselves becomes the challenge. It's the same as individuals within an organization. Talent and the way talent is used and how we respond as an organization is very, very relevant. Now, I know that this slide is very basic, but what I was trying to indicate in this slide, and I like it quite a lot because it is a center of business sustainability, and the driver for that is talent. You cannot achieve strategy unless you understand who will drive and deliver strategy. And driving strategy, it's talent. Talent is the heart of what we do. So, as we go through and debate around who is the rising star, why, and the relevance of it, we should not lose sight of the fact that it's about business sustainability at the end of the day. And hence the investments which we put in around developing people becomes very, very important. As I conclude my thoughts, I think it's important to appreciate that focus on people requires a greater conviction within leaders. You can't do it if you don't believe in it, and you don't believe that that's the way for the future of the business. Equally so, leaders need to be responsible to a great extent in developing and nurturing people, including managing performance. It's one thing, of course, to look at about developing people, but how do you gauge whether you are on the right track? No, performance management is not about the ability to say you're right or wrong or you have achieved according to, but it's about understanding how far you have progressed towards the set goals, which drives business sustainability. It is not going to happen if we don't create an environment which nurtures talent. And that's what needs to happen all the time from a leadership point of view. I would like to end by saying, by this quote, which I think it's very appropriate for us, from Tess Reinhardt. It reads as, in terms of economic uncertainty, there is nothing more important or strategic that we can be doing to ensure continuous success than managing talent and ensuring that we nurture talent. Now more than ever, we need to be focusing on high performance and developing talent. Thank you.